Oh. Hello, everyone. It's Graham Cofe with another My Music. I'm going to be speaking today to someone that's been here before, Richard Evans, about, as we've just discussed prior to coming on there, the weirdest year of his life, which is always a good topic of conversation, isn't it? But let's find out about that straight after this. Richard, thank you so much for coming and talk to me again today. I think we ought to start with the story of what's happened to you over the last couple of years, because to be honest, it's a bit of a story, and also it kind of sets the kind of backdrop for probably the rest of the conversation about the music, etc. So explain to listeners, viewers, what exactly happened.
Well, so literally this time last year, actually the start of November last year, I was kind of busy. I was writing a new album, as you do, and kind of carrying on with my life, when I had a throat infection which wouldn't go away. And by the end of that week, I ended up in a situation. I woke up one morning and my eyelids were drooping. So I thought, well, that's a bit interesting. That's not my usual face in the mirror first thing in the morning. But I wasn't too bothered. It was just a bit curious. Anyway, by the middle of the day, I was having pins and needles in my limbs, my hands and my arms and legs and feet. And that was kind of getting a bit stranger. And then by the evening, I couldn't walk. So this condition, this is called Miller-Fisher syndrome, and it's an autoimmune disorder. And it happens when your body overreacts to an infection, to a viral infection, and your body kind of goes, right, I'm getting rid of everything. And it goes into overdrive and it annihilates your nervous system. And that's what had happened to me, which I obviously didn't know about. And then that became, go to A&E, me thinking they'd send me home, like check me over, send me home. It's something and nothing. And they kind of said, well, you can't really stand up, can you? So we can't send you home. And, the sort of logic you have in your head that's complete nonsense when you understand what's happening to you. And then it was like a weekend of medical tests, MRI, lumbar punctures and CT scans. And it was like all of your worst fears, here they are kind of thing. And so, they figured out what it was. But the tricky part was that they were worried about my breathing collapsing, because it can just take out the whole respiratory system. And this is where I think, from my perspective, musically, this was where I was where sort of some musical background came in, because I've done a lot of work with a voice coach and, how to sort of increase the airflow and everything like that. And I said, look, they wanted to put me into a coma to have machines do everything for me. And I said, I don't want that, because I know when my breathing's in trouble, I know kind of when it's wrong, and I'm sure it's not going to fail. So they kind of let me do that on the condition that for 10 days, every 4 hours, day and night, they did these oxygen tests where I had to kind of hit a certain threshold. So that was, it was tricky for a few days, to be blunt. And then the rest of it was because I couldn't sit up, I couldn't eat or feed myself or even open my eyes, because all of your motor skills go. So it was then rebuilding that. And again, sort of with, I think, having a creative background really helped. I'm just going to let you know that my cat may walk across camera at any moment.
That's fine. Yeah,
she does her own thing.
It just happens, doesn't it?
She's here she comes. So she knows
something's
going on. So with that, I kind of, rather than say when you're in a hospital situation and I'm going to just let her come and sit on me, it's a very difficult condition. But I think having had a creative background really helped me, because you're kind of used to making something from nothing, if you like. And you can be, as a musician, sometimes in a terrible situation, you've got nothing going for you, and you kind of have to draw on your own resources to some extent to kind of, right, what are the steps out of this situation? What do I have to do to kind of either turn my career around or a performance around or whatever it is? And I did feel that gave me some wherewithal to help me deal with it, because it was more than anything a mental process to kind of go, right, this is terrible and, very scary for a little while, but what am I going to do? I have no options other than get through it. I can't really wallow, because it's not going to help me. And it just affects your own mood, and your attitude was everything, I think, to get through that. So
how long from, I mean, because you look in good health now.
Yeah.
He said, I'm all right, touch wood.
Yeah.
Who knows? How long from the period of time when you were in hospital and you couldn't move, etc., to some semblance of normality, how long did that take?
I was in hospital for just over a month, and the thing I had to do to kind of get out was learn how to walk up and down stairs again, which I was kind of like, you have all these little milestones to reach, and I just thought, I'm going to do it. I kind of would visualize getting out and the task and do it. But it was probably another 3 months before I could see properly again and really kind of get back to work. But again, in that sort of what I call the rehabilitation period, I would practice keyboard again, because that was good for my dexterity, and then start to sing again as well, because all of this control had gone completely. So it is
journey. It is a journey. A journey is a really good way of talking about it.
Yeah.
So now, in terms of the music that you're starting to release now, was all of that written prior to all of this happening, or have you then having gone through this experience, gone, actually, I need to draw on this experience?
I think absolutely the latter. I had a bunch of stuff written, which I kind of put to one side, because any kind of, for a musician or a creative person, any kind of profound experience, it unlocks stuff for people. It goes in. It's just the way your brain works. So I think I have written some new material, including Dream of the World, which is on the EP, and that was directly coming out of this circumstance, because the experience made me think, I was in a life-threatening situation, and I didn't do it all on my own by any means, but part of how I got out was changing my attitude about certain of parts of the situation. And you have to say to yourself, look, you've got to dig deep, otherwise you're done, kind of thing. And it felt that, in a way, in the world that we're living in these days, there is a resonance there, in that the news has been so bad for so long, and we're all, I'm sure, and I think since COVID, all of that global trauma and with climate change is affecting a lot of people, and young people as well. But I think, sometimes we've just got to find a way out. And I don't know all of the answers there, but part of it is that we can do something. We can make a change.
So, to some extent, this new music, and is this going to be part of an album? By the way, is this going to lead to an album, or is it just individual tracks?
There are more tracks in this area that are going to be on the next album. Yeah. there is a sort of concept for the next album, so I'll be tying those together creatively. But yeah, there is a bit more material of this type.
So this concept that's developing is this going to be your, like, I Trawl the Megahertz? If for anyone that doesn't know that album, which was Paddy McClune's album when he lost his eyesight because he had retinal detachment.
Right.
Right. So, after all of those successful years with Prefab Sprout, etc., he suddenly found himself unable to see. And it was an interesting album because he obviously tuned into tuning in, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can't tell you, it's an awful thing to say, but an experience that takes you to the edge, it can be really valuable as well. And not that I would wish it on anybody or my worst enemy, but it is a profound experience because you're right on the edge of everything that you hold dear, and that you could lose that. It changes you, I think. And I do think, there's something in it, because I was always of the opinion maybe not to write personal songs. So much of it is about, from my perspective, is about the ego, and that's we've all seen enough of that. Different directions to go creatively. So
did it make you, I mean, this might sound like a weird question, but did it actually make you hear things differently?
Do you know what? I would lie in the bed in the hospital and I would be composing music, because it was kind of, my mind was all I had at that point. And there's one of the new songs that I'm working on right now talks about the sound of the machines. And that's the machines in the hospital. Because you kind of, as a musician, you kind of go, well, there's a little rhythm there going on. It's almost like a discordant sequence of some kind. And you do become aware of things that maybe you would have called annoying before, if that makes sense. It is part of the soundtrack, isn't it? The sort of ambient soundtrack to an environment.
Yeah, I think we get so busy normally, that we kind of tune out a lot of the melodic ambient noise that's there in our lives.
Definitely.
And it only takes a minute of kind of sudden realization that you're in that space, and then all of a sudden it's like, I've never heard that, but that's always there, and it's like anyone that's ever written a song about, I don't know, with a kind of a train noise in it, that rhythm, which you become really when you do what I used to do, which was leave the home at 3 o'clock in the morning and go and catch a train in the dead of night, or the dead of morning, and sit on the train with virtually nobody else on it for hours and whatever, and you're you're in semi-conscious, because you've only just kind of woken up. You suddenly become very aware of that.
It's interesting, isn't it? That change of awareness, I think, is how I would describe it. Because there would be, you kind of, in that circumstance, there's kind of bleeping going on all night. You think, how the hell am I going to sleep? But actually, when I changed how I thought about it, it was fine. And which was for me quite a lesson personally. Like if I change my attitude, maybe it's not as bad, or I can find a way to deal with this.
Well, it's funny because we actually, as humans, we react really well to noise,
right?
And that's fascinating. And one of the things that really brought this home to me was when we had our first child, and my wife was able to go over to a midwifery unit rather than the hospital. She managed to escape hospital very quickly, even after a C-section. to spend some time in this midwifery unit. And one of the things that they did was they put the newborn children in this area with fans that had this whirring noise. And on leaving, you'll love this, on leaving the hospital, they actually had, back in the day, tapes that you could purchase of the noise of the fans, because it helped the baby sleep.
Isn't that wonderful?
It is wonderful.
Yeah.
But they kind of explained it that it was something similar to the kind of noise that a baby experienced in terms of amniotic fluid going around in the room. It had that kind of similar. So I guess whilst we're developing our sense of hearing, we're actually surrounded by gurgles and noises and pops and things.
Yeah.
We're not surrounded by silence. So when we come out into the world, you know, the assumption is that we've kind of almost been cocooned in nothingness, and then we come out and suddenly we experience stuff. But actually, we're experiencing stuff right from.
Yeah. Well, there's the thing, isn't, you know, the thing about, you know, talking to the child while the child's in the womb and all this sort of stuff. And, you know, it's very interesting. And you know, that it's part of how we're formed, isn't it? In a way, through childhood as well. You know, so yeah, it's to become more aware of it.
Yeah.
That sort of,
when you're false, like you were.
Yeah.
I can't move. I can't get up. You can't do anything. You're faced with two things, aren't you? Well, or you have two choices. You can either just go, right, this is annoying because I normally do all of this. And I'm sure to some extent you were annoyed that you couldn't do all of the things that you normally do. But it sounds like at the same time, you creatively found a way of embracing that and going, actually, I'm going to let my mind dance with this as well and go, oh, you know.
So, I'm sure that the nurses and doctors thought I was probably a bit kind of crazy, because I would, when I went later in the process, when I was starting to get more movement, I would listen to music and in a very limited way dance in the bed, because, you know, you're kind of motivating yourself. And, you know, as a musician, I guess that sound is what you respond to, you know. But it was very much, you know, a bit of a binary situation, because I think for people in that circumstance, you know, they offered me a lot of counselling, which I said, look, I don't need it. I'm kind of all right. I know I'm all right. But you know, to lose your mobility is a big thing for someone. So it can take you down, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it can. Maybe in future you can go back to the hospital and leave some copies of the album when it comes out.
Yeah,
for anybody that's in a similar situation.
Yeah, I did. You know, talking with the physiotherapists as I was sort of in the rehab phase, they were very interested in the sort of the role of creativity in, you know, how, you know, a person gets themselves out of, you know, because I think the mental challenges of any serious illness are in a way as significant as the physiological challenges, because, you know, it is a trauma for someone to go through. And I think, you know, they were interested in us, you know, people using positive thinking of one kind or another to deal with what they were going through.
Yeah, so, I think that's fundamental. You know, a few years back, my wife suddenly one day lost the ability to speak.
Gosh.
Which they diagnosed as FND, functional neurological disorder,
right?
And which they reckon then comes out of a trauma. But she was, you know, after like the initial frustration, I guess, of I can't do this, I can't get anything out, and having to write everything down and everything else, you know. It was interesting, because there was a lot of conversation from doctors about, well, you know, you can't put too much pressure on this, and it may never happen and whatever. And she was like, no, I'm going to speak. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to make as much effort as possible. And if you don't, it's like people quite often talk about manifestation, don't they, these days, and manifesting things. But I sometimes wonder, in my belief of that, are you manifesting it, or are you just being incredibly tenacious and positive about it to the point where it's going to happen because you're being incredibly tenacious and positive about it? I don't know.
I'll tell you something on that note, really. So in this circumstance, I was kind of thinking, right, what am I going to be doing? What am I getting better for? Really was the thing. And I was kind of, well, I want to be back on stage and la la la. So I kind of, in my mind, was trying to visualize this period, 12 months on from it, where I would be back on stage. And incredibly, that's what's just happened. We've just done 3 shows at a festival, and it was kind of surreal because, you are partly being stubborn and kind of going for what to a certain extent. But it was, it wasn't something I pitched for. It was something I was asked to do. So I didn't even have to try, except to make the show, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing, and I think it's probably a little bit of both, really. There is it's good for you to visualize things for your own sort of, positive direction. But then is it like you put something out? I don't know. Or is it?
Who knows? Maybe it's bigger than any of us will ever know.
Maybe. Yeah. It's nice for things to be unknown, isn't it? As well.
Yeah. Maybe it's just dreaming of the world.
That's
what I did there. So tell us about the EP. So what's the main aim? What's the theme of the EP?
Well, really, so "Dream of the World" is the title track, and it really is that sort of. It's a personal statement, but it's also a sort of global statement, I guess, if you like, or a sort of social statement about we can make a difference. I think it's maybe about believing in the future, because say when I was growing up, we had a more aspirational vision of the future, and that technology wasn't going to destroy us. It was going to open up all these doorways for us, and there wasn't quite the sort of techno trauma that there is these days. And I think it's partly that retro future aspect where the future can be something that isn't terrifying, but also we can make the world the way we want it, because maybe at the moment there's a relatively small number of individuals who are doing a pretty good job of kind of wrecking a lot of things, but there's probably more people, I would guess, on the right side of sanity who want a nice, democratic, fair, egalitarian world that's not poisoning everybody. So maybe this silent majority can have their say more, and have belief in themselves more.
I quite often come back round to sort of social media and the internet and everything else, but it's part of my job, so I'm bound to, but I think it's very interesting because I definitely think I grew up in a time where, as you say, technology seemed to hold the key to things, but also I just think because we didn't have the internet, we were nicely naive on a global scale about just what was going on, and that naivety bore real kind of enthusiasm and belief that we could actually change things.
Yes.
And I think it's harder these days because you kind of you kind of see so much more in front of you,
and it's instant as well.
And it's instant. It may be more difficult to just get behind a movement.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, you know, and the one thing I always come back down to is Live Aid, right?
Right.
I'm always going to come back down to Live Aid, right?
Yeah,
Because it's music, and it was the most amazing day of music ever.
Sure.
But also that whole attitude that created Live Aid.
Yes.
Any of us that were watching on the TV at the time were like, we're doing something incredibly powerful here.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are actually going to stop starvation in Ethiopia. We are going to change the world. Now, we found out later on that wasn't as easy as that. And that even if we raised all of that money and we sent aid and everything else, you know, there was lots of other things that were in the way, like the fact that, you know, disproportionately different countries owe other countries a lot, or the World Bank lots of money, and you know, until you start changing legislation, that doesn't, you know, it's a drop in the ocean. But I loved the belief,
and it does invalidate Live Aid. Those other factors, you know, they're part of the puzzle, but what those artists did on that day and what the public did through that as well is still really powerful.
Absolutely.
You know, I think anything that kind of gives us belief again amidst this cynicism and the many challenges that, you know, we're dealing with in the world, I think it's got to be good.
Yeah. You know? And I think we saw that again a few years back when COVID hit. And I think that's what's ultimately changed people's trajectory for a lot of people in their lives and made them realize, oh, actually, this is what's important. And if something does that, anything happens in your lifetime that does that, that's massive. That's really, really massive. But I believe that, you know, during COVID, we saw angels again.
Absolutely.
We saw people that were like angels on earth who really put themselves and humanity before everything. We also saw some people being idiots.
Yeah, right? But I felt, most people, you know, to a certain point during lockdowns, we were thinking of each other and putting
absolutely
before the, you know, our individual, you know, it was so frustrating for everybody. And in a way, it's interesting because I think, you know, the cynicism of, you know, what Dominic Cummings did, and it kind of destroyed a lot of faith. And it's interesting that one individual's actions, let's say, had such a sort of debilitating effect. But we're always going to get that. We're always going to get some aspect of somebody being selfish or whatever, or thoughtless. And it's, you know, keeping going, I think, regardless, because that's always going to happen. But it shouldn't take us away from what, you know, what we, you know, collectively, the values that most people, I think, hold.
So in this music, is there light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, there is. Absolutely. I mean, if we give up or if we give in, we might as well not bother. You know, what are we doing? And you know, it does go back to the health experience that I had, because, you know, something like that focuses what you hold dear in life to an absolute fine point, you know, and you kind of go, well, you know, what do I want to get better for? Who is it that's caring for me? And like you said, talking about angels, the staff in the hospital work for, you know, with no recognition, no individual acknowledgement, and they're there caring for people day and night, you know, when they're exhausted, and they do it with good humor for the most part and dedication, and it's incredible. And you see that, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to hear the rest of the music that's going to come out from this. For anyone that wants to hear, it's electronica, but it's also quite proggy in areas as well, which I really quite enjoyed.
We can't hide that. Nor should we.
Can't hide that. Nor should we. No.
Yeah.
You know, we're all prog fans at heart.
Absolutely.
Have you listened to the new Peter Gabriel yet?
I haven't actually. No.
Yeah, it's very good.
No, is it worth catching?
It's very good. I mean, it's been a long time in the making.
Right.
A long time in the making. But I think he's done a pretty good job, actually, which is great. And we needed the godfather of prog to just produce last fantastic opus of an album and keep the whole name of it alive.
Yeah.
Which is good. I'd just be interested to know, as you develop the rest of the music for this, are you going to sneak into a hospital and get some field recordings, or?
I'm kind of. I have a wonderful sound library in the studio here, which does include some medical machinery, which will be part of.
Lovely. Yeah. Well, there you are. You heard it here first.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's quite a lot. It's quite exciting. I'm quite to getting it down in the studio.
That will be the quiz for the project when it finally arrives for anyone is to go through the album and actually identify what machinery is.
Yeah. Again, on us, just in terms of like the live shows that we were planning, if we can, thinking about going back to your point about sort of immersive audio, that's a direction we want to go in with the live experience as well, which, going just when you were talking about, the child in the womb and everything earlier, and it's almost that's kind of where we come from. And so why shouldn't we try and recreate that in a performance experience as well,
Yeah.
So we're trying to sort of move towards 5.1 audio if we can.
5.1 audio, and maybe if anyone's watching, if you're a VR company as well, and you could
get in touch.
You want to try something different. Well, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? To have a sort of different VIP package where people could have a VR headset, which
absolutely. Yeah.
Which gave them some kind of like visual representation of, I don't know, Richard in a hospital bed or something.
Yeah, or themselves.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, kind of lying there with all of the equipment going on and just let people. That'd be amazing, actually.
Yeah. No, it's interesting stuff that the VR aspect is stuff that we've been talking about, and have. So it will be interesting to see how that develops if we can sort of take it in the way we want to.
Well, it's probably the way that maybe some artists, because it's getting cheaper as well, it may be the way that some artists can develop a more immersive experience where people can't afford to build a stadium like U2 did over in Vegas.
Well, the recent shows we've done, we actually ended up projecting all of our visuals on the outside of a building.
You did? Fantastic.
It was and we used light to sort of make it into a 3D environment with lasers and whatnot. So it's really interesting what you can do on not a mega budget. For that we had 2.1 audio, but it wouldn't have taken much more to do 5.1 or 7.1. So I think things are much more in range now than they used to be. Without that whole sphere in Vegas craziness.
Which we'd all love to play at just for the experience. But but it's with the likelihood of it ever happening is slim. So but there you go. Although I hear that they may be building one in London. I don't know.
I think the mayor objected to it or something. I don't
object to it? Well,
well, there's a lot you can do with video walls as well. So it doesn't have to be a full 360 sphere, because you can hire in, nice big video walls to create a sort of, immersive space. Do that.
No, absolutely. I think there's loads you can do. Let's be frank, Richard. I mean, for anyone that lives opposite a building like that,
yes,
an absolute nightmare.
I think you wouldn't want it, would you? So
No,
I think
no, you wouldn't.
there's ways to do it indoors without keeping an entire city awake 24 hours a day.
Now, on that note, thank you so much for coming and
Thanks for
chatting.
having me. It's been wonderful talking to you.
So the EP is called Dream of the World. The release date of that is?
That came out mid-October, and it's on all of the streaming platforms, including my favorite, Bandcamp, which is where people should go if they want to support artists. But it's on all the other ones that maybe don't support artists quite so much.
Yeah, no. People should go to Bandcamp because they can actually download it and pay a little bit of money towards it, etc. And there's shows. Are there shows booked for 2024?
We're discussing that at the moment. It's looking like the back end of 24, which will be a mix of material from Sentinel and stuff from the new album and this kind of audio visual feast that we just delivered in Manchester.
Lovely.
So it'll be a thing.
And there may be merch available at those shows as well.
Oh yes,
including again t-shirts of Richard in a hospital bed.
Maybe to do some market testing to see if that's what people actually would want.
or maybe just the cover from the album. Just we'll wait and see. It's been a pleasure talking to you and catching up. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been Richard Evans on My Music. Please do go and check out his music and have a listen to the latest material because it's rather good. If you've enjoyed this, please do share it with your friends, your family, and everybody else. If you haven't enjoyed it, well, tough. That's just you've probably taken a wrong turn somewhere, and maybe now is the time to turn around and go in the opposite direction. Until next time, which will be later this afternoon, actually. Bye for now.